Gather around, Skull brothers and sisters. This is Skull World, brought to you by Minnesota Sports Talk. I'm your host, Dave. You can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at Skull World. I got a treat for you today. I searched the YouTubes and I found Minnesota Tim, and I invited him on our show today.
Heyo.
Mr. Tim, Minnesota Tim. Tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Minnesota Tim, a Minnesota Vikings podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Minnesota Tim1. I tried to get the Minnesota Tim handle, but apparently I'm struggling to get that because someone had it a long time ago. And for whatever reason, even though that account is expired, I had to go with the number 1 at the end of my name. So Minnesota Tim with the number 1 at the end of my name.
Well, you're number 1 in our book, Tim. So
thanks, man.
I had the same problem with Instagram getting Skull World. I have Skull World for everything. Well, I'm Minnesota Sports Talk, but the show is called Skull World. So, but yeah, I've run into that too. Now, I was first introduced to you as far as your YouTube channel by Rap from a Vocal Vike, who used to be Purple Pocket Podcast, and then I went to start looking at your videos, and to my surprise, you had the great Paul Allen on your show. Tell us about that. What was it like interviewing Paul Allen?
It was awesome. I've interviewed him multiple times throughout my radio career, first of all. And then when I started doing a podcast, then I just texted him, asked him if he'd come on the podcast. And typically we do interviews before the season starts, get some predictions, I get a little season preview type of thing. But I didn't have time to do that with him this year. So that didn't work out on the schedule. So I texted him once the season was over and asked if he'd be willing to come on the show. And he sure was. So Paul Allen, he's always a great guest, and he's so knowledgeable about the Minnesota Vikings, just with the inside knowledge, inside information that he has being around the team as often as he is. And of course he brought it as he always does.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience with Wabi. I got to interview him 3 or 4 times, but Paul Allen, I haven't tried yet, so that gives me hope that he would bestow, his grace on a YouTube channel. He seems wonderful, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's super nice.
One of the things I told my buddies is that you seem polished, and I'm not from the Minnesota area. I've moved away from South Dakota back in '98. I've lived in the South since. So I know you were on the radio, and the first thing I said to him is he seems polished, like he's done this before. what have you done throughout your career?
Well, I graduated from St. Cloud State back in 2014, and then right after that, I hosted a show for a local radio station in St. Cloud on Saturday mornings from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And on that show, I interviewed guys like Ernie Johnson, Torrey Hunter, Kevin Harlan, Paul Allen was one of the guys, Matt Blair, a former Minnesota Vikings linebacker who's now passed away.
Yep.
So I interviewed a bunch of those guys on that show. Was able to pitch the work that I did to Sirius XM Radio in DC, and wasn't a host there, but was a producer. Since I was a host producer in Minnesota, pitched my work to Sirius XM, and then they hired me there at a part-time job. Eventually got full-time, and then iHeartMedia back in 2019 plucked me away from Sirius XM, which allowed me to move back to Minnesota.
Awesome. So you're doing iHeartRadio still?
Yeah. Yep. I still produce podcasts for iHeartRadio, and then my podcast is also on iHeartRadio as well, to a lesser degree than the podcast that I produce.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. Speaking of, I brought up Paul Allen. Now you're unique to the YouTube to where I follow 50 or 60 Vikings podcasts that are out there, and some are dead, some are still, most of them are still alive. The one unique thing that you have on your YouTube is you wear your faith on your sleeve, much like Paul Allen does. How important is that to you when you're doing your craft?
Well, it's extremely important, and I'm a youth pastor at our local church. That's a part-time job that I do. And going through the years and listening to podcasts that I listen to, and seeing some other things, I tried going the route, or experimented is the right word, going the route of cussing a couple times on the podcast, and just being more, I don't know, worldly, if that's a term that I can use. And the more I did that, the more I didn't like the podcast that I did, and the more I was going away from the identity that I find myself in Christ. And I just had to go back to what I know and who I am. And even though I see, people like the Pat McAfee show exploding, and other podcasts that out there that are super popular because and they use vulgar language, it's just not who I am and not who I want to represent, for me, my family, for Christ. And so that's just the route that I've taken. It took, experimenting and trying different avenues, but eventually I found my way back to my identity being in Christ first.
I mean, that's super important. I feel like authenticity is like what I hope is out there. What I hope when someone watches my YouTube, they think this is me. Unfortunately, I will let some words slip every once in a while.
Well, we all do,
Uh,
don't we? I mean, come on, it happens.
I let them go. I remember I worked for a Baptist. I was the athletic director for a Baptist school, and that was my first job out of college. And I got cut off on the highway, and I let a F bomb go with my team in the back. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And I said, you know what? That just makes you seem real. They said to me.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, it happens, man. It
And I mean,
happens to
I
the best
swear
of us.
too. I mean, throughout the day, I say SOBs every once in a while, but when it comes to the podcast, I can discuss the Minnesota Vikings or whatever is on my mind without having to swear and drop F bombs or drop, the A
Yeah.
word or whatever. So it's not that I don't ever swear. I definitely do throughout the course of the day when I jam my finger in the car door or something like that. But if I can control it, I'll try to keep it to a minimum.
It now keeping on that track of faith being important to you. We see NFL players on a big stage.
Hmm.
Um, give the glory to God when they win. And then even at interviews during the regular season, you got a Tua who's very open about it. Kirk Cousins, obviously, and even more recently, a young phenom, C.J.
Yeah.
Stroud.
Hmm.
Um, when you see that, how do you feel?
I feel encouraged. I feel like, the world wants to push against biblical views and against Jesus Christ being the foundation and the creator and everything in between, and that's who we receive salvation through. And to see these prominent athletes be unafraid to share that Jesus is their Lord and Savior, and that's who they and that's where they find their identity. I think it's remarkable. It's encouraging. It's inspiring. And I think it's super cool that after Super Bowls, I remember the Los Angeles Rams when they won the Super Bowl, Cooper Cup, I think Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, even after they won the Super Bowl, every single one of them gave praise to God. And I thought, you know what? That's pretty cool. If that's the reason why they won the Super Bowl, because I believe in God being providential, that things aren't necessarily circumstance or coincidental. Um, then that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm encouraged that someone like you is putting himself out there and is not hiding the fact or not putting it under a bush, right? If we heard in Sunday school. So I appreciate appreciate you being out there. Now you've done some videos recently that I watched, and you made some points that may contradict what I feel and what but you would actually find that a lot of my listeners agree with to an extent. And first of all, you were talking. One of the videos was the Green Bay Packers and how Jordan Love isn't all that.
Hmm.
Basically, can you tell me what you think of the youngest team in the NFL going into the season, the Green Bay Packers, who just made the playoffs?
Well, I think the Green Bay Packers fans need to look at themselves a little bit in the mirror. I want to look. I want to see what their reactions of Jordan Love were when the Green Bay Packers started the season. What, 2-5? I think it was, or 3-5, something like that. It was a terrible start to the season. Jordan Love was inaccurate, and even they lost to the Danny DeVito New York Giants, for crying out loud. A guy that got benched a couple of weeks later for Tyrod Taylor. So Jordan Love has holes in his game. They were, a couple of unforced errors, a missed field goal, interception from Love, from beating the 49ers on the road in San Francisco. And, they win that game. They might beat Detroit. They might be in the Super Bowl game with Jordan Love his first year starting. But I want the point that I was bringing up is things get a lot more complicated when you have to pay your quarterback a bunch of money. And Jordan Love, was he did he turn it on at the end of the year? Was he good at the end of the year? Yes, he was. But can he continue to be consistent with a 20-1 touchdown to interception ratio? I don't think so. I think what he was doing at the end of the year was special, but not consistent enough. And when you have to pay him 40-50 million dollars a year, and you can't afford to keep those defensive players, and you can't afford to keep some of the wide receivers that he has, and you can't afford to keep some of the offensive linemen that he has, will he continue to pour it on like he was in the second half of the year? I think that's fair to question, and that's the only point I was making. I think Jordan Love, as great as he was, I don't think it's consistent. I don't think he can continue that, and I think we'll see more answers next season when he starts for the Green Bay Packers.
Now, also the Green Bay Packers are what, -3 million in cap
Right.
space too, and so there's a lot of fans talk about our cap situation, which actually hasn't been this good in a long time. We're the Green Bay Packers are facing 3 million negative with a looming contract in front of them with Jordan Love.
Yeah. So like that even defends my position even more. Aaron Jones, one of their good running backs. The chances that they bring him back while they're -3 million in cap space, and Jordan Love's going to demand an extension in about a year, maybe even this offseason they were looking at
Yeah,
it.
is this year 4 for him?
Yeah, something like that. I know he signed like a year deal last year to extend him, and I think he's technically has one more year under contract. And I saw a report a couple of weeks ago that they're going to try to negotiate an extension this offseason to take care of him a little bit here. But Aaron Jones, are they going to be able to afford him? Romeo Dobbs, when the time comes to pay him a whole bunch of money, are they going to be able to afford him? And they probably will, but then they're going to lose some defensive players. So when you pay that quarterback and your quarterback's not on a rookie deal anymore, things get a little bit more tricky, and you kind of become like a Kansas City Chiefs situation. You need your quarterback to be so good that it can overcompensate some of those positions that that are lacking on the defense or offensive end, like Mahomes is able to do for the Chiefs.
Yeah, it even looks like Jordan Love's got a void year. He's got $5.2 million in dead cap in 2025 when he's out of contract. So this is his last year,
Hmm.
2024.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know how that contract worked. He was drafted in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you had a bigger contract in year 5. Yeah, I'm looking at dead cap of 12 million. It seems unusual, and that's on Spot Track. So I don't
Hmm.
know. Yeah, well, they're gonna have to. They're facing it regardless. So that's something there. Now you made the point that regardless if Kirk is here or not, the Vikings are going to make the playoffs in that
Hmm.
video.
Hmm.
What
I honestly don't remember saying that.
you
So
actually did, man.
thank you for reminding
I'm
me.
gonna have that in the. I'm gonna have the video in the comments, and I'm sorry, but I just ate my kid's birthday cake. I actually look
Oh
like I got a
man,
blue tongue.
what
He
kind of
has a
birthday cake was
Spider-Man
that?
cake.
Is that ice
Uh,
cream cake or no?
no, it was just a regular cake with a really
Okay.
a lot of food coloring in the frosting, apparently. But
Ice cream cake's pretty good.
yeah, uh, yeah, I keep looking at myself and and I got a blue tongue. Anyways, that being said, I got the you did say that. I was wondering. Anyway, I'll put it in the description. Do you feel differently? I guess
I
than
feel like what I remember saying, and of course I believe what you saw. What I remember saying is that I thought the Vikings would have a better record than the Green Bay Packers next season, regardless if Kirk Cousins is back. I thought that's what I said. But
you said I think you let playoffs slip.
okay,
But
well, if the
yeah,
playoffs slip, screw it.
it's a
Vikings will make the
7-minute
playoffs.
video, I
Come
think.
on,
So you can go
hey,
back
I'll
and take
take
a
it.
look.
I'll take it. Hey, Vikings make the playoffs. Screw it. I'll stand by it.
What be, either way, us being better than the Packers record, or in one of the points as you made, and we'll talk about that as the schedule. But I'm going to bring that up in a separate point. Um, what does a in I believe you with Kirk Cousins at the quarterback. What situation would make us be better than them without Kirk Cousins? What is that quarterback situation?
That's a good question. I think that quarterback situation is either you trade up into the top 3 and get one of those guys, even if that's JJ McCarthy. Or you bring in, and I know Minnesota Vikings fans do not like this one bit. Or you bring in Russell Wilson and you let him be the bridge quarterback to that rookie guy, Mr. Unlimited. And I get how annoying he is. Russell Wilson's the most annoying quarterback in the NFL. But you look at his statistics and you look at what he was able to do with the Broncos in the short time that he had there in his few seasons. He had 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions this year when he got benched. Those aren't terrible statistics. And when you consider the deal that you could get for Russell Wilson this offseason, you're looking at probably a 1 year, $5 to $10 million deal versus, you bring in some other bridge guy, it might be a little bit more than that. So I like the idea, or I'm not fully against the idea of bringing in Russell Wilson as that bridge guy to a JJ McCarthy. But if it's a Drake May, even a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, I like to call him Jaden McDaniels because Jaden McDaniels plays for the Timberwolves and their names are eerily similar.
Yeah.
I would let that guy start and be the opening day starter for the Minnesota Vikings and hope you have a situation like CJ Stroud where they took the Houston Texans from like a 3-win team to a playoff team.
Now I think we share the same viewpoint on Jaden Daniels. He's my number one, and
over
Caleb
Williams and May.
What's that?
Over Williams and May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I share that with a few people. I think even Thor Nystrom said it was a tie between 1A and 1B with him and Caleb Williams. For me, it was I questioned Caleb Williams' maturity when it comes to how he handles defeat, and I'm not talking about the crying in the stands. I'm more talking about the moping on the sideline and drawing FU Notre Dame on his fingernail polish and losing to him by throwing 3 picks. I don't think that's a mature thing to do.
Yeah.
Going into your final year of your of your your college years, and then you end up 7-5, right? So I blame the defense. I don't blame him. I still, I got him number 2, so it's not like that. So for me, that's the tiebreaker between him and Jordan Daniels. Jordan Daniels peaked at this time. He didn't take a step back, and I just think I think he's underrated throwing the ball. He's not underrated running the ball for sure. The production was just undeniable. I look back at a video of him as a senior in high school, and I'm like, God, the dude looks the same. He's always been this physically talented. And talking to Thor Nystrom, he actually talked about how one of his biggest traits is how he was adapting throughout his college, where they put him in this simulator, and then they had to start putting it on 1.5, 2 times the speed for him reading and reacting to defenses, and how he just got better and better and better, and it showed up in his last year of his college. I think he struggled at, I believe it was Arizona State, and then he was able to overcome. And I think that's a big character arc for a quarterback is you saw a struggle. What'd you do with it? He did that with it. And that was and win the Heisman Trophy and 5,000 yards running and passing. So that's what it's for me. Now there's some flaws, I think, in Drake and May. I can see you said top 3 and potentially JJ McCarthy. Are you putting JJ McCarthy above Drake May?
No, not necessarily. To be honest, grading and analyzing college quarterbacks coming out in the NFL draft is not my strength, but I did see a report come out today or yesterday that said there are people in the NFL that grade JJ McCarthy as the number 2 quarterback coming out of this year's draft class. So there are teams out there that love JJ McCarthy. And I think the closer it gets to NFL draft season, the higher teams are going to value JJ McCarthy because that's the way the NFL works. The quarterback's the most valuable position in the league. We saw the same with Anthony Richardson. Yep. This time last year, he wasn't graded as a top 3 quarterback to be taken in the NFL draft. But you get to the combine, you see his measurables, you see how high he can jump, you see how he can throw the football. And the combine is really the perfect place for a quarterback to jump off up boards. And Jim Harbaugh's on record saying that he should be the number 1 quarterback taken in the draft. I would not be surprised at all if McCarthy's stock jumps up extremely high and he's a top 4 selection in this year's draft.
Yeah, there are some very very favorable reports out there. But it always brings me back to Malik Willis or Will Levis, and you're
Yeah,
like, what? How much is smoke and how much is fire, right?
totally.
And
Yeah, there's so
yeah,
much
so
garbage
don't
out there.
it's like, what are we supposed to believe? Is this
Right.
just a way for us to be suckered into drafting a quarterback
Mhm.
way too early? That's what that's the fear, and I think that a lot of people have. And we, honestly, nobody wants to do a desperate draft pick. And I don't. The 4 guys we talk about, I'm okay with taking at 11.
Mhm.
I, depending on what we're able to give up, even move up for them. But I don't want to. For me, I guess I want to avoid as much as possible to trade our future for that. And one of my arguments I make is, they make people make is get rid of Kirk Cousins. All that salary is gone. We can build a team around him. And the only guy that won on a rookie contract has been Patrick Mahomes the last 10 years. But one of the things you're trading away is draft picks that could be cheap, really
Mm,
good assets. And if you hit on them,
that's a
could
good point.
improve your team.
Mhm.
But if you trade up to the first or second or third pick and you give away 3 first round picks in a couple of seconds, I've seen, you're giving away 4 or 5 players that could be big pieces to your puzzle for years to come, that a rookie that you could have used to add on to the rookie you sat and picked. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Totally.
So you're not gonna the hope you're gonna save money and get good free agents to fill those rosters. Well, you could have had them as rookie guys on 4 or 5 year contracts, just the same. You know what I'm saying? So there's a catch 22 going with the draft and go get your guy, and then hey, there's you take the guy at 11 kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm. Totally. Yeah, 100%. I
Just
100% get that logic. Yeah.
the weight of it. Now, one of the other videos you did, and it kind of ties into this, and I'll do this. You talked about the schedule. And I agree. I think it's easier this year and more favorable. I don't like that we have to go to Europe again
Yeah.
and lose a
Home game? Yeah.
yeah, home game. Like 2 years ago I think we lost an away game, right?
Mhm.
So that was pretty cool. This year we'll lose a home game, so we're 8-8 road and away, but it's still better than what we had last year, and we're in a third place schedule. And the NFC has proven to be a little bit weak, and you're going to look at Cowboys team that's probably reeling a little bit. You saw an Eagles team just tank the whole last third of the season. You saw a team go to the Super Bowl that you beat in the regular season without Justin Jefferson when we were desperate to win a game, and we did it on a Monday night.
Mhm.
Oh, getting rid of Kirk Cousins means that you're not going for it. And when I see a schedule or a favorable situation or a weaker NFC, or you know NFC North isn't quite there yet either, I th- I f- I'm always looking at this is the time to strike rather than, hey, let's take a step back, fight for third place with the Bears. And that's the way I feel like it would happen if we moved on from Kirk. What's your viewpoint is we couldn't afford him. Is that right? I think that's might have been what you said.
Well, technically, people have run the numbers that are smarter
Well,
than
you
me,
can
but you
do
you
it.
you
I'm just
can
saying
do it. Yeah.
you can do it. You said you can do it, but you're
Yeah.
saying, but can the Vikings afford it, kind of thing. So
Right.
could you talk to that?
Yeah, so the first point that you made, that this is the year the Vikings should go after the Super Bowl, with the 49ers reeling, the Eagles reeling, the Cowboys potentially reeling. Um, I look at the Super Bowl and I look at those top 2 teams, the Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. And the Minnesota Vikings right now are not in the same stratosphere, even with Kirk Cousins. Offensively, sure. Kirk Cousins, JJ, TJ Hawkinson when he returns, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne if they resign him. But offensive line, I don't know if the Vikings are in the same stratosphere, even with Christian Darrisaw. Inside offensive line, they're still weak with Garrett Bradbury. Garrett Bradbury gets mowed over by defensive tackles that are way bigger and stronger than he is. And most importantly, defensively. And heck, let's even throw special teams in there for fun. You look at what special teams did in that Super Bowl for the Chiefs and for the 49ers. You had field goals from all over the place. You had records broken by field goal kickers. It was like the longest field goal since like 1980 or something like that, like that 55
I
yarder.
also had a
And
missed
that
extra
and that
point.
and that what's that?
He also had a missed extra point.
And well, you had a missed extra point, but that record, a 55-yard field goal, lasted for 30 minutes until someone hit a longer one from like 58 yards. So special teams, Greg Joseph isn't on the same level.
I think he's a free agent, though.
Well, either way, the Vikings don't have a kicker on the same level as those two teams. And defensively, we don't, I mean, we got Danielle Hunter, but he might not be back. Joey, you look at what the 49ers had, and they were the losing team. Bosa, Fred Warner, the best linebacker in the league. You look at their cornerbacks, they had that Tre'Davious Ward. They got stars all over their defense. And you look at the Chiefs, the reason why they won the Super Bowl is because of their defense. Mahomes was fantastic, but the defense kept them in the game. And the Vikings do not have a defense that can even sniff the jockstrap of the 49ers and the Chiefs.
Well, I mean, that's obviously a good point. I do the argument with the 49ers defense. We kind of handled them though, right? They were the defense was fully healthy, and we kind of handled them on a Monday, or was it Monday night? Yeah, Monday night.
Yeah, something like we played unbelievably well. They were I think we beat them like 22-17 in that game. So yeah, the Vikings defense was spectacular in that game. But then I'll turn right around and maybe at the end of the season they weren't fully healthy. But the Green Bay Packers just mowed right over the Minnesota Vikings. Same with the Detroit Lions.
Oh, for sure. Now on defense wise, I mean, one of the points you made is we had the getting rid of Kirk is because we have so many holes. You just mentioned the offense. Even though offense, depending on how much I thought it played better than the year before. And I don't think there was a point, and maybe it's still standing, that our center didn't even give up a sack the whole season, and Reisner didn't give up a sack the whole season. Ed Ingram, obviously, you can stun on him all day, but on our bookend tackles, that is definitely a above average line. And I think like the Cincinnati Bengals went with the Super Bowl with a really crappy offensive line at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think we're off on how maybe bad our offensive line is or how good it is, but defensively, yeah, there's definitely holes there. How far are we off on the defense? That defense was at one point in the season 7th in scoring, ended up 13th because the last few games were absolutely horrible. How far off? How many pieces do we need on that defense?
A lot.
Tell me. Defensive line.
Defensive line. Well, if Danielle Hunter comes back, we need some elite defensive ends. We need at least one really good defensive end. If Danielle Hunter's not back, and that's going to be difficult to replace. Harrison Phillips, if the Vikings don't cut him, we're going to need another defensive tackle. So you need some good blitzing, rushing defensive ends. Linebackers were doing pretty good. Ivan Pace Jr. was spectacular his rookie season, and he was undrafted. But even more importantly, cornerbacks. The Vikings cornerbacks are very lackluster at best right now. Harrison Smith, he's probably not coming back, so you got to find a player to replace him. Cam Bynum, he's a good enough safety back there. But Lewis Seen certainly isn't going to step into the mold and replace Harrison Smith. He can't even be the second string safety on the team. He's not that good. But cornerbacks, you saw guys get torched by wide receivers in the second half of the season. I think a big part of why Brian Flores sent blitzes so many times this season is because he needed the quarterback to get rid of the ball because he knew his cornerbacks couldn't guard their wide receivers for long enough. I think that was a big part of Brian Flores' strategy, and I think it was a great strategy. But at the end of the year, you saw teams expose that a little bit because they saw the same thing over and over again on tape. And you look at what Jake Browning did to the Minnesota Vikings with the Cincinnati Bengals in that second half, just torched, threw jump balls over and over again, and Vikings cornerbacks couldn't make a play.
Yeah, they were a couple of fuck it. Oh, that's my first word. F it balls. F it balls that came down out of nowhere, right? And then Blackman just sat and watched one fall into the receiver hand.
Yeah, and Evans got benched how many times at the end of the year? Evans got benched a bunch.
I'm probably going to say that our safety I don't think Harrison Smith was actually played pretty average this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other safeties actually stepped up pretty good. To where I don't think we'll fall off if we lose, and if anything, we're saving 13 or anywhere between 11 to 15
Yeah.
million.
We'll
I
probably be
forget.
better without Harrison Smith. I agree. Josh Metellus is a beast. So
Yeah.
I'm a big Metellus guy.
And I think Lucine's going to come around and be a contributor, whether or not he'll be the star they were hoping for. Definitely, I'm not betting on that. But what would help the cornerbacks the most, probably, because I like Blackman. I like we saw what happened when Murphy went down, or it just went to crap. But I think what would help that the safeties and the corners would be getting a better pass rush than we hit. For me, I put out a defense that just added a nose tackle and basically a D end, and I brought Wanham and Daniil Hunter back, and people liked it, and I actually signed Winfield. So I really only signed. Oh yeah, this is what I did. I got Christian Wilkins, I got Winfield, and then I just drafted a nose tackle, which was Devontae. Forget his last name, from Texas.
Freeman or whatever, was that his name? I don't know.
I forget Sweat, Devontae Sweat from Texas. I put him in on that defense, and I was like, this actually looks pretty good. You got Devontae nose tackle, he's 365 pounds. You got Harrison Phillips at end. You got,
and he still resigned Kirk Cousins.
Oh, you said it yourself. If you could bring back Kirk Cousins.
But you're bringing in Winfield and Daniil Hunter and this Wilkins guy. How much money are you putting to the future with that? With all these deals?
So, for instance, you brought up Kirk Cousins. We couldn't afford him. Well, if we don't have him, he's costing us $28 million.
Right. Yeah.
So we're in worse shape letting Kirk Cousins go than we are signing, because now we have a hole at quarterback, and we got a $28 million hit at quarterback.
Well, that's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that's 1 year.
And I've seen someone do the math to get us up to $70 million in cap space, and able to re-sign, extend Justin Jefferson, re-sign Kirk, and re-sign Daniil Hunter, and you still have like $30 million left to get free agents, which I think I no longer think we could get both Winfield and Wilkins, because I guess Christian Wilkins is asking for a ton, so it's probably not going to be there. But I'm not even including the other draft picks that we have, or the other free agents, or someone stepping up. You know what I'm saying? Like a Blackman stepping up, or that the defensive the edge rusher from Army that we got as a UDFA. He got a lot of playing time, and I'd like to see him in an off season with NFL regiment. You know what I'm saying? Because he was Army strong. Now he'd be NFL strong. You know what I'm saying? I want to see that. It would require people to step up and hits in the draft, much like we had with an Addison and an Ivan Pace Jr. That filled two really big holes very nicely. What is keeping us from that? And I'm not even thinking about 2024. I'm also thinking about 2025, because we will have even more cap space. Of course, we now have to extend Darisaw, but we have more room as we're going along, including we haven't seen what the cap space is going to be. So my thought is, this year, if you want to go for it, you're also going for it in 2025. And with Kwesi, he's talked about having multiple shots. So I'm also thinking in line with what he's thinking is, hey, I have multiple shots, and I would prefer that over doing what he said, going full Rams. I think he said. You know what I'm saying? So I'm also thinking of what would Kwesi be thinking? What's your feel of that? What do you think Kwesi is looking at doing?
I think he's trying to get. I think in a perfect world, Kirk Cousins comes back for Kwesi on a 2-year, whatever, $80 million deal, $75 million deal. He gets Kirk to take that hometown discount, and I believe there's an offer on the table for Kirk Cousins right now. I think the issue is going to come up because Kirk Cousins knows that if he goes on the marketplace, he's going to get a massive contract from the Falcons, from the Steelers, from one of these QB needy teams. And if you're Kirk Cousins and his agent, why not go out to the market and see what you can get? You throw a week before the combine, like he said he's going to do, show that you can still move, show that you can still throw, which we all know he still can do. and see if you can drive that price up to the Minnesota Vikings. I think it starts and ends with Kirk. If
Well,
he
it'd be
leaves,
dead by then, wouldn't it? With the Vikings,
what do
because
you mean?
we would have had to take in that $28 million cap.
Well, the 20 there would be a 28 dead cap if Kirk Cousins doesn't leave, but in the future, if you sign him, if you sign him, you're probably going to have dead cap space in the future anyway. So either way, you probably got to get rid of that dead cap money. I think
Yeah, I
another
mean,
way.
you'd be eating it up. If you've gone to that week before the combine, I think the cap hits at March 12th or something like that. So you would have taken the $28 million hit. Now you're negotiating them in free agency and competing against multiple teams. I don't see that as a scenario where the Vikings bring him back, but you're right. You know, it's hit. We don't have to worry about that $28 million again. But one of the worries I have, and you can talk about it, is, and I just watched Purple Daily right before you came on, and they talked about it too, as when they, if we're going into the draft with we're going into free agency, no Kirk, we moved on, and we go into the draft, we have a obvious hole at quarterback. Are we attracting free agents when you don't have, what direction is your team in? You don't even have a quarterback. And when you go into the draft and you're trying to trade up, hey, you really need a quarterback. Throw in that extra second round pick, and it's a deal. Do you feel like, hey, it's going into the free agency, going into the draft, even trying to move up, it's almost a detriment not to have the quarterback already in place.
Yeah,
I feel that way.
okay, I think that's a fair feeling, but I feel like we as fans can overhype just how much free agents are looking at a team and looking at how much they're going to win. I think money speaks and money speaks volumes, even over winning when players are free agents. Now, if a player is 33, 34, 35 years old and he has 1 year left or a couple years left to try to make a Super Bowl run or make a splash, well, then you might see that player take a discount and sign with the Chiefs or sign with another Super Bowl favorite team. But when you look at free agents, I don't necessarily think they're looking at, oh, who's your quarterback situation right now? And they're more so looking at the dollars and cents. And I mean, we see it, we see it every year. We see this crappy team sign this player to 50, $40 million guaranteed. And you wonder, oh, why did he sign there? Well, money speaks loud, even over winning. And I think players can convince themselves that they are the missing piece to a winning formula on this team. I mean, these guys' egos are massive. You got agents, you got family members, you got people speaking to their ear over and over and over again, saying, hey, you're the missing piece. You're this guy that's going to take this franchise over the top. And hey, they're giving you 40, 50, 60 million guaranteed money. So I think money speaks really, really loud in free agents' minds.
Yeah, you also do see that players holding out to go to a winning team also. And you do make the point that, hey, someone at the end of his career might choose a team based on, hey, can I win now kind of thing. But you also run into Davenport, or we won the bid on him, and he came to us because we were the winning better, but didn't work out so well. So you hit and you miss sometimes, and oh my gosh, Davenport is probably, people are probably it's going to haunt some people for a while in trusting Kwesi. He was listed as in a lot of lists as like the top 3 free agents going in the season. So when they got Murphy and they got him, I was like, damn, we're really going for it. That was one of the things, is like we were like negative 20 million in the under the, in cap hell, and we went and signed like everybody back and got 2 big free agents. And I'm like, hey, we're positive 29, right? Or 25, whatever, something like that. I don't think the cap has been adjusted yet for 2024. And we're positive right now. What can we do with that? That's what and I've had that 2024, 2025 window. And it's not just this year. Give me 2 seasons of draft, give me 2 seasons of free agency, give me finally not finally, but a good defensive coordinator compared to what we had before with Donashell. But give me a Flores. Now, one of the things I like is that, hey, we are a destination franchise. We were the number 1 team in the NFLPA going into 2023. people want to play for us. A detractor is the state income tax isn't so great, but then you also got a Brian Flores now because some players would like to go see what they can do with a particular coach. And there's a lot of guys on the team that are probably going to be, banging the drum saying, "Hey, we love it here with, Brian Flores. Come, come be a big part of this." And I think guys like Murphy, guys like Daniel Hunter's a free agent, but all these guys will be talking about their coach and how much they like playing for him, like they did to the media all year.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's lots of players on lots of teams that talk to players about, hey, join my team because my coach is this and that. So I think you hear a lot of that around the NFL. I mean, you look at the NBA, for example, just a quick comparison. Draymond Green was calling LeBron James's agent, trying to get him to accept a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers, in his ear constantly. And Draymond Green's the most annoying player in NBA history. So I think you get that a lot around the NFL circles. You get players saying, hey, come play for us
And they
because we
share
have this coach.
agents too and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I think that's a little bit of a stretch in my opinion. Just saying, hey, come join our team because this coach is this. I think you get a lot of that around the league because there's a lot of great coaches.
Yeah. Now, hey, I appreciate you coming on the show today. We had very healthy debate, and I think we always want the same thing as get us closer to a Super Bowl,
Hey,
if
let's
not
do it.
win it.
Hey, right.
Um, and there's multiple ways to do it, and we've seen that across the league. So hey, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Well, I appreciate you asking me, Dave. That's fun. It was a good conversation.
As we end it, tell us where we can find you again.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Minnesota Tim with the number 1, and on YouTube, the Minnesota Tim podcast, a Minnesota Vikings podcast. So those are the two spots. Apple and Spotify too. If you Google the Minnesota Tim podcast.
And thanks again, man. And as I had a pop up show up right now, you were saying that, Skull Vikes.